The tools needed to perform this adjustment are a 19mm socket and socket wrench, two 13mm wrenches, and don't think you can use a socket wrench here because there isn't enough space to get a socket head, so you need two 13mm wrenches, and then a flathead screwdriver or some small pry bar to put a little down pressure on the system for the final adjustment. And finally, you'll need the alignment jig that ships with the machine. You should be able to find this alignment jig in the cab. If you can't find the alignment jig, contact our service department to have one sent out.
So the first step is to loosen these 3 bolts that hold this arm. So these are slotted. You should see some slot on either side of that. So we're just going to loosen those just enough that that arm can move a little bit. Okay. So all 3 of those are just loose enough that they're still holding the part on, but the arm can now move in these slots. All right. The next step is we got to take tension off the belt. Okay, so that's done. Oh, get a bigger ratchet. Nope. So that's done by loosening that bolt. Okay. And that when this goes back together, it's important this tab goes up into that hole right there. Okay, that's the pivot. So when you put it back together, that's where that's going to go. So you want to get that loose enough that the belt will just come off. Okay. The next step is to install the alignment jig. This piece is just going to snap on to the 3 crank arms. And it's going to snap on right here, close to the bearing. Okay. There. There. And there. So right here and right here. That's right. Okay. So this tool now has set the exact correct position of these 2 arms. Okay. What we don't want is we don't want the crank arms to be pointed away from each other or pointed toward each other. They have to be perfectly parallel. And this jig will set them in that position. Now that we've got the jig installed and everything's loose, we're going to put the belt back on. And we're going to make sure that we keep tension on this bottom stretch of the belt. So as many teeth as we can get over the top of that sprocket, that's what we're going to do. Okay. So then belt goes under the tensioner, and then we're going to put that tensioner right back in this hole. Okay. You apply tension by prying just gently on that guy. This belt doesn't need to be crazy tight, so we're going to pull a little tension on that, start to tighten this bolt, and just watch that it doesn't over tighten the belt as you get that bolt tight. I want to be able to pinch that belt about 1/4 of an inch on either side at least, with just very light pressure. It doesn't need to be terribly tight. Okay. I'll double check that before I crank this down. The last check that you're going to make before you tighten these 3 bolts is you want to make sure that you haven't bottomed out in a slot. So you can tell that this is more or less centered. It's a little off, but it's not bottomed out in the slot. So by that we know that the adjustment should be good. If you've bottomed out in one of these slots, then what we have to do is go back and loosen the belt, skip it a tooth so that this is in the center, and then tighten the belt back up and recheck. If you're sure that you're not bottomed out in that slot, then we're going to tighten these guys back up, and that's the entire procedure. Okay, adjustment should be complete, so we're going to snap this jig out of here. Just pop it off the 3 pins. Fish it out of there. Now to check the motion, I like to get up grab onto it. You should be able to roll it freely, 360 degrees without any scrapes or clanks, or without the stacker head tilting up or down. If the stacker head's tilting up and down, if it's doing something like this, that means that these arms are not parallel, which is the adjustment that we just performed.